For this demo we need the collection package installed. The collection package needs the saved search package and the data source package. We have created a new collection in this section collections that basically stores a list of countries. We have already 3 records. We will add a new one. As you can see, this is a simple form where we will write a country and the corresponding code, and this new record is added to our collection. Now we have 4 records. For every collection, once it is created, a new data source is created automatically. If we go to Designer and Data Sources, we can see that we have a data source that has the same name of our collection test 1. This data source has all the access points that allow us to manipulate the collection information. For testing purposes, we recommend to disable this option, enable SSL certificate verification, because usually we have self-signed certificates in our testing environments. By default is set to enable, but it's better to disable this option. Well, we will see what information is returned when we call the list all data source or access point, sorry. As you can see, all the information is encapsulated in a data attribute. This data attribute is an array of objects in which each object has information like IDs, dates, and a data attribute that contains the information associated to our record. In this case, we have the code and country of our record. So we can see that the object is relatively complex, and well, it has all the countries and codes inside the data element of every object of the response. Now we will see the screens used in this demo. The first one is the form collection. This screen is the one used when adding new records in the collection, example collection. This screen has 2 fields. Every field has the corresponding name, country, and code. This is the information that is stored in the record, as we have seen in this response from the data source. We have the corresponding code and country variables stored from this screen. Now we will look at the other screen that will have the record list control. The record list control is associated to a variable called record list 1. This control will use this record form, we call it form record list. This form record list has 2 fields with control associated to these 2 controls that should have the same names of our collection records. I mean, we need a code and a country control because we will display information from our collection, so we need to map or have the same names. The goal is to fill this record list with information from a collection. In this case, in the preview, we are doing this manually, but we will fill this information automatically. For that, we will need to create a process. This process will have 3 tasks. The first one is a data connector that we call our data source. The next one is a script task that will map information received from the data source to the format needed for our record list control. that will be done by a script task. Now let's see how the data connector is configured. The first thing is that we are pointed to a data source called collection test1. As you can remember, this data source was created automatically when we created a collection, and inside this data source we will from this data source we'll use the list all access point. The list all access point is part of the data source that is created automatically when we create a collection. All the information from the data source or all the response from the data source will be stored in a request variable. As you can remember, this is information returned by the data source. All the information from the records of the collection are encapsulated inside a data attribute. The data attribute is an array of objects in which every object represents a record of our collection. So we will store this main attribute data, this array, in this request variable. We will call this variable response collection. So response collection will store this array. The information from the data source will be mapped using a script task. This script task will basically transform the data to a compatible one for our record list control. The script task has this little code in this section. Basically, we are getting from the request data that is always available for PHP script in a data variable. We are accessing the response collection request variable that we have created before. As you can remember from our data source, we stored all the data, or let's say the list of record data from our collection in this variable. We will traverse this array, and we will create a new array called record list 1 that is basically a list of objects that has a country and a code attribute. How we get this information from every record? As you can remember, every record is represented by this object. So we need to get from this record the data, and inside the data the country and code attributes. And this new array will be stored in a record list variable. This variable should have the same name of our record list variable that we, as you can remember, is call it record list 1. So we are storing in a record list 1 the PHP variable that we use it in our script. Now we will test our process, starting a new request. Now the data source and the script task are executed. When the execution finishes, if we go inside our last task review data, we can see that our screen is already filled with information from our collection. Indeed, we can see that the last item or record that we added out to our collection is already visible